was.
Oh,
It is
we're
what it
going
is.
live.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. This is Cody. I am here live with Roland Lopez. Roland had run for Congress this past primaries. He's a true conservative constitutionalist. Were you part of the Freedom Caucus? Did you get to talk to them?
Yes, actually, Paul Gosar was one of the Freedom Caucus members, and he endorsed me. I was
Okay.
also talking to Andy Biggs and was trying to set up time with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, but we ran out of time. I did talk to Andy Biggs
Uh-huh.
towards the end. Once again, it was a timing thing, and the other person that was kind of in the middle. I think there was some stuff going on. Obviously, Madison Cawthorn. He was going to support me, but I think there was some issues that he held off on my
Okay.
endorsement. So, but it's okay. I mean, a lot of the Freedom Caucus were exactly who I was going to align with.
Okay, so we just started and we just started talking and went right into it. What district were you running for, Roland?
Texas 38. So Texas 38 was one of the new
Hmm.
two districts. 37 and 38 came into the fray. We picked up two seats. I think we should have picked up, I think, three, but nonetheless, we picked up two. I was zoned in 7, where Lizzie Fletcher won last cycle, and her competitor on the Republican side was Wesley Hunt, who I ran against, and about 8 other candidates in the new District 38.
Hmm.
7 was held by Republicans for 52 years, but I ran in my district, so I ran in 38. You know, whether it was a good decision or bad decision, I wanted to run in the district I represent, which is oil and gas, and a lot of true constitutional conservatives. So,
And you know a lot about oil and gas because
yep,
that's something that you do.
yep.
I wanted to talk to you today. I mean, I usually don't have talking points because I just like to talk about whatever comes to your mind or my mind. And one
Hmm.
of the things that I have noticed in this past election cycles, and it's very sad to me to say this, I think that we are running more into selections over elections. There
Hmm.
are deals that are being done. I'm starting to see a uniparty, something where the Republicans and the Democrats have turned their back on the constituents, the people's vote, and it's the money, the endorsements, the people that really are not there to represent the true conservative values, the true constitutionalists, the come here legally, no amnesty, the pro-life, the gun amendments, and also as well as our First Amendment right, which a lot of us have been a victim of.
Hmm.
So what is your take on the whole uniparty and what you saw running for office before you ran for office? What did are you are you disappointed in what you saw within the Republican Party? And let me just take, what do you have to say on
Yeah.
that?
So no. I mean that's a lot to unpack, and trust me, I've got it. I've got it all here. I don't need a script. Like, I think we've talked plenty. Bianca and I have talked plenty. I don't need a script. You asked me, I'm going to tell you what I think and what I know, and that's part of. I've never been scripted in my campaign, and what I believe, because it's what I believe. I don't have to think about it. So am I disappointed? Absolutely. It was in my first run, and that I learned plenty. Absolutely. I mean, this is part of the learning process and being in the political arena. Absolute corruption, absolute disappointment, and not only my party, but to your point, it's people were anointed, people were selected, if you
Mhm.
will. And to give you an example, the guy that got nominated, Hunt, had 100 times my money. I struggled. There was people in my district that were running, that were actually asked to not run, or somewhat indirectly intimidated. I'm not going to get into that, but I've actually already spoken to these people, and I tell you what, it's definitely corrupt, not only in the Republican at the national level, but even within my party. Within the last 5 weeks of my campaign, I heard independently, and this is secondhand. I can't say that definitively I was going to be the winner, and I'm not saying any of that. It was my
Mhm.
first run. It was absolutely a learning experience, and something that I had to learn the game, learn the players involved, and then personally start taking them out. because we need constitutional conservatives. We
Mhm.
need people like the Freedom Caucus members, like the Jim Jordans, the Scott Perrys, Paul Gosars, Andy Gibbs, to start taking over Congress so that we actually start to have power within Congress, and a Jim Jordan being a Speaker of the House, because then you're going to start serving the people. I think, to your point, there's a lot of self-serving, like the guy that got nominated in my district, in my opinion. And I'm not like angry. It's, he had the money. So somehow he didn't show up to a single debate, a single forum, and got 54% of the vote. So he was a hide-in Biden, literally, and somehow won the election. Didn't show up to none of the debates. There's always a conflict, or just didn't show up. So what that tells me is that he's serving someone else, not his constituents, because at a minimum, you want to, get involved. And I wanted to do old fashioned politicking. I've talked to Bianca about it. I've talked to a lot of the constituents that I represent, or would have represented what I wanted to do. I had solutions. I had ideas. I knew what I want to do based on the different issues that we're confronting. The border. I went down to the border. I'm from the border. I mean, you're from the Valley, so you know what's going on front and center. What we hear in the media is absolutely not the truth. Number one, nobody's reporting on it, and they don't know the reality of the whole immigration process, the human trafficking, the fentanyl, the rape trees. People don't have a scope of what actually goes on down there on that trek up to this side, and then the exploitation. So these are the issues that he didn't talk about because he didn't even show up. And people are very scripted, so they're serving someone else. And I said in one of my speech, I was like, very fiery. I really popped out and started kind of getting into my stride, where I said, Lizzie Fletcher was kind of like the district that I was originally running in, where I was zoned originally until we got redistrict. She's Nancy Pelosi's lapdog. In this case, the guy that got elected in my new district, he's going to be Kevin McCarthy's lapdog. So you'll see that they're beholden, and you'll see their bank accounts. You'll see their coffers. They'll have $3 million. I mean, guy that's run once before, had $7.6 million in his last run and lost, had already 2.6, 2.8 million by the primary. It's not even the general.
Wow.
So he had 1/3 of what he had the last cycle, 7.6, 7.8 million roughly. So he had about a third already, and it's just the primary. Didn't spend any money, hardly any money, because I looked at all the FEC reports and didn't show up to a single debate. So once again, to your point, they're beholden to someone else, not the constituents.
Yeah, and it's sad for them not to go to these town halls, these debates, these forums, because that's when the constituents get to know you, where you stand. And especially like the town halls and the forums, because you're getting questions that you don't know a lot of times. And this is when a scripted candidate is very telling. I mean, I've heard candidates that are now congresswomen, and every time they get lost, they bring out, they're so used to the script, and I hear them just turn to God. And it's good to turn to God, but that is not what the question is. They're asking you for a solution. They're asking you for something that we need to do. I mean, yes, praying is good, but we have to have a solution, to these problems.
Yeah,
And
I've seen many occasions on the candidate that I ran against. Same thing, talking points. They asked a question and just kind of veered off and went straight into the talking points. That's when you know that they're scripted and they can't deviate and get to the point, which is, are you prepared to serve your constituents? Do you know the policy that impacts and how it impacts your constituents? And what are you going to do to make that better for them? So those answers just don't come from let me go back to what my campaign manager or communications director told me to say and make sure I follow the script. If you see him on a couple of interviews, and this is on not Fox, but what's the other, Newsmax, you'll see him ask a question. I'm like, that's not even, he in a roundabout way maybe mentioned oil and gas, but he went straight to the talking points. And you're just like, okay, this is the guy that's representing you. And it's baffling how just like Joe Biden, how he got 15 million more votes and one of the most popular, even though I don't agree with this president, one of the most popular presidents in our history, in our lifetime,
Mhm.
at least ours. How he got 15 more million votes than him is outstanding. Just like my guy got 54% of the vote and never showed up to a forum or debate. So, did he have name recognition? I'll give him that. He ran last time. Okay. But it's
But
baffling.
and that's one of the things that we're running against because of the name recognition, the money that the GOP is pouring into these candidates that are gonna echo what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And we have that. I mean, in my congressional district, the persons that I have to vote for is somebody that's endorsed by Kevin McCarthy, Dan Crenshaw, and is just going to be a puppet for the establishment, or I have a socialist candidate. So this is when my
Those are
conflict,
your options. Yeah.
yes, those are my options. And as sad as can be, I'm a VDR. I go out and encourage people and register them to vote. I've been very active in a local level with campaigns and calling people, hey, you haven't come to vote. And for me to say I am not going to vote, it is very disheartening because I vote my conscience, and I cannot consciously vote for a person that is not going to represent me. So a lot of times, and it was unfortunately I wasn't able to help you in your campaign, or Bianca, but I at this point would rather help somebody outside my area than my area, because when you're running for Congress, it doesn't matter what area you're in, you're going to represent me as well, because your vote is going to affect me.
Mm-hmm.
So I rather have somebody there that's going to vote the way, you know, my conscience states and what the Constitution says.
Yeah, and a good example of that is, even though I'm in the Houston area and one of the, I think it's 7 congressional districts in this metro area. I think it's about 7, something like that. But nonetheless, whatever, 5, 7, congressional districts within Houston area, because it's so populated. The issues that impact even my district and the constituency
Mhm.
around Houston come from the valley, come from the border. One of the main ones being the border issue. Whether it's human trafficking, Houston's one of the major hubs. Whether
Yes.
it's fentanyl, drug is a major issue in the United States. So once again, my vote's going to count towards resolving those issues or having solutions for those issues. Illegal immigration. Well, guess where they end up? We have liberal, parties here in Houston. These guys they're idiots. They're like, we're essentially, well, we care about everybody, until it actually hits their own sanctuary city, like you're seeing in DC and New York. It's like, oh crap, we've got
Hmm.
7,500 or 5,000 people, and I'm laughing. I'm like, that's what we get daily in the valley, and they're complaining about 5,000 or 7,500 in
We get that
DC.
in a day
And,
sometimes.
and it's laughable because now it's impacting their backyard. Now it's
Hmm.
in their little zone, and just like, oh, that's what it's like. Yeah, that's what it's like, times a couple of million. What the valley is facing when you have Eagle Pass, and this is something, the statistics early on that were happening were what's his name, Bruno, or the mayor for Eagle Pass, I forgot his name, but nonetheless, he was talking about how the population, roughly about 35,000 or something, like 32,000. Well, it doubled in about a month's time. So think about the impact when you call an ambulance or you call some kind of resource, and you're a tax-paying citizen. And I use this example to try to give people a breath of this. That's just one little town. There's millions passing and then being dished out all over the country. But this is one little town where they actually doubled in size. And it didn't only affect, I mean, I even put it in my video before all of this. And I talked about how it's hitting and it's exhausting our own resources, the taxpayers' resources, meaning you can't even call for an ambulance.
Hmm.
Or if you go to the grocery store, I mean, grocery stores say, "Hey, I'm feeding and I'm supplying a population of 32,000 at the HEB here, at the Kroger there, at the grocery store here and there," and they have a set amount that coming in to serve that population. When you double, and then your own citizens of like Eagle Pass in this case, for example, can't even get a gallon of milk because everybody that has their little, Visa
Hmm.
cards from the government, are going to buy milk, they're going to buy formula, they're going to buy this, and you're going to the grocery store and it's like a hurricane. There's
There's
nothing there on the
nothing.
shelves. And these are the impacts that people don't realize because they have this liberal logic. And that liberal logic is like, oh, we've got to be compassionate. We've got to help our fellow brothers. And so, yeah, I'll help them any day. We're charitable. We're one of those charitable countries in the world. I'll help them the right way. And you know what? That's actually more beneficial than the
Mhm.
government getting involved. And there's a way to do it. And it's called legal immigration.
Yeah, and I've read, I mean, where the United States is one of the most giving, country, and they
Hmm.
do it willingly. Us private citizens, we
Hmm.
we donate, we volunteer, we do those things. We do it willingly. We don't need the government doing it for us,
Yep.
forcing us to do it. But now that you bring that up about sending the illegals up to the states, how do you feel about that from Governor Abbott? Because I personally feel that it shouldn't be done because we're just giving them a free ride further into our country using our
Hmm.
taxpayer monies. Why can't we just secure our borders or send them back into Mexico, send them back
No,
across the
I,
border?
I I agree. There was a stay-at-home order by Trump. We didn't have 7,000, ridiculous amount coming a day or even a week, number one.
Hmm.
So that was orderly. And you can't say that it completely stopped it, but it was a little bit more orderly, and we can actually vet, as much as we can. Were there still people getting through? I'm sure. But it wasn't chaos, number one. And number two, I absolutely agree that Abbott's been, there's, between West and Huffines and other candidates, they actually had better plans. And the plans were actually of action. Abbott is being embarrassed by even DeSantis by having, I hate to say it, the balls
Hmm.
the muster to actually say, you need to stop this and this is what you need to do. The plans were actually, to your point, stopping illegal immigration. Not, I think it's a little comical because they're getting a taste of their own medicine. But to your point, it's still not serving the core issue, which is stopping the immigration and not allowing them to come into our country illegally and invading our border and our sovereign country and sending them back immediately.
Yeah, the
That
illegal aliens, they're
that we're
happy. They're
stopping.
getting a free trip on our taxpayer money, Texans sending them into New York, to Washington, to wherever they want to go up there. They
Yeah,
want to be up
getting getting free money,
there.
getting free
Hmm.
education, free Medicare, free transportation, and the clincher, which the latest issue was the tennis player that couldn't come in because he didn't have
Novak.
a COVID
Yeah.
shot, but 2 million illegal aliens are just going in without a COVID shot. It's a hypocrisy, and like I said, I call it liberal logic.
Yeah,
It's
even Carrie Lake
okay,
called them out on it.
yeah,
Carrie Lake. Uh-huh.
yeah, it's okay here, but not over there. And keep in mind, you're just like, there's this new invention out there. It's called audio and video and even the internet that we can see this happening. And they're oblivious to it because they're like a Joseph Goebbels or Baghdad Bob, where they're propaganda ministers and they just spew it out. And it's happening in the background. Like there's a fire in the background, and there's like, oh, this is peaceful.
Oh,
Don't worry
nothing's
about it.
happening.
That it's just a campfire. We'll turn it out.
Yeah,
And then the city is literally burning,
it
and
goes
they're
to those
oblivious to the truth.
it goes into those memes and during the riots where the reporters, and it was actually not a meme, it actually happened. The
Yeah.
reporters were saying that everything is
Mhm.
fine, nothing is wrong, but yet it's rioting in the background of wherever they're at.
The
And
mostly peaceful
the
protests.
summer of
That's what
love.
it's
It was
called.
a
Yeah.
summer of love. Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
So let's go into your expertise of oil and gas. With the gas prices going the way they are, the Texas, the way we are. We're supposed to be energy efficient, energy independent, and
Mhm.
now when Trump had us, as energy independent, we have gone back so far that it is. I mean, our gas prices are high. It's getting expensive to drive. It's getting expensive to fly. Even the winter's coming. We see the people in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of older people. How are they going to deal with the cold because of the energy, how expensive it is?
This is a play to force the green energy deal, and even Buttigieg and a couple of others in the administration have talked about. If they feel the pain enough, they're going to go to electric. Now, this is once again the idiocy of liberal logic. And what I mean by that is, how the hell are you going to afford a $60,000 car at the bottom base if you can't even afford, $5 gas or $4 gas or even $3.50 gas? That is the pain they're trying to push. They're trying to push that green energy agenda where you have no other option, and it's like the liberal, like like the liberal tactics. Saul Alinsky, you have this blueprint, and that blueprint is you create the problem and you have the solution ready to go. They think that by forcing this problem by higher gas prices, it's going to force people to go into green energy. But once again, this is their liberal logic. How do you say you can't afford gas, so go buy a $60,000 car? And then on top of that, the logic, and coming from the oil and gas industry, we laugh at this crap. We laugh at the fact that oil and gas, fossil fuels, generate the energy at the electric plants, coal-fired plants, natural gas plants. These are the things that actually generate the power for these electric cars. And let me give you one more side note. These electric cars, the components for these cars, I think it's 60%, maybe a little bit less percent, actually come from oil-based products. So the plastics, the lubricants, all these byproducts that come from oil, guess what? They come from the ground, fossil fuels, crude oil. In addition to an LNG natural gas plant or a coal fire plant, those are fossil fuels that fuel the electric car. So even though they're headed towards this green energy, all they're doing is displacing the burning of fuel in the cities and displacing it wherever the power plant is. In addition to that, they're not very good thinkers, because if you're fueling just your homes, and we had an incident like we did last February, or a year ago February, the freeze, and we're at capacity, and our cities, especially here in Texas, are growing, and ERCOT is getting maxed out, and we have to use 20% alternative energy. How the hell, if we start doing a light switch away and just increase the number of cars, electric cars, to the capacity that is well beyond, how is your grid ready for this? And then once again, what does the grid run on? Oh yeah, it's fossil fuels, natural gas. The logic and the planning is just really ridiculous on the part of the liberals to think they can handle this, and nothing's being done to say, hey, we've got to triple the capacity of our power generating plants, ERCOT, and whatever. We've got to quadruple it, because if we do a light switch away and we say, hey, by 2030, we have to be all electric, or 2035, or whatever year that is, when are you going to start really doubling and tripling and quadrupling the capacity of these electric plants? They're not doing any of that.
Yeah, and that's what California is doing. They're putting a timeline where they're not going to allow people to.
But you know what? Then that's where literally their society will collapse, and they'll realize, oh crap, yeah, we still need our old cars, because we're going to be in a Tesla on the side of the road waiting 7 hours to fuel another 3 hours just to get another 300 miles. But they don't see this. Everybody else sees it, especially in the oil and gas industry, because we laugh about stuff like this. We see this like, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna go buy a 1978 Bronco and go do like maybe diesel, because you can do diesel or gas yourself, because of certain components. It's easy to reproduce, and
you're gonna have to show me how to do that.
I'm gonna live like freaking Mad Max and produce my own gas, and prance around in a 1978 Bronco. That's because the logic is the government is the worst person to provide for the citizens. That's why you have such innovative technologies, innovative entrepreneurs and ideas that have fueled this country since the beginning. That's why we're who we are, the free market capitalist society. That's why everybody wants to come here.
Yes, and yet we're taking all that away.
Yep. And they're trying to accelerate it, which is a scary part, which is not only going to put us in a situation, we'll probably be okay, because I think Texas will probably pivot 10th Amendment, like we're doing with, some of the abortion rights. We'll probably be able to supply our own food, our own gas. We have manufacturing. So Texas can probably survive to a lot longer than most states. California, they can produce movies, but that's not going to feed. That's not going to move your car
So
or
that's
have food on the table unless you pay for it and barter. That's ridiculous. But their logic is, well, we'll produce a movie and make money. But here we can actually produce goods that maybe will sustain us. But what really makes me scared is what's happening overseas. And what's happening overseas in Eastern Europe and Western Europe, mainly Eastern, is the dependence on Russia.
mhm.
And the fuel that's not coming from us has to come from Russia. And if Russia's in the middle of this war, they're not providing the resources. And I have actually a good friend that's a Bulgarian attorney. She now lives in the States. She actually fears what's going to happen in her own country. And that's just Bulgaria. That's part of the Balkans. That's not even Eastern Europe, where everybody's dependent on Putin. And Putin's fighting a war. He's not producing
He's not
natural
worried
gas
about
or
that. Yeah.
fuel. And if
Mhm.
he is, guess where it's going? It's going to sell for him and supply what he needs for the war and supply his own country and his own resources in the military. So it's going to be a big shock, and we will see a lot happen this winter, I believe.
Yeah. We're gonna see. That's one of the things that I'm keeping my eye on, and trying to see, especially up in the northern states, to see what's gonna happen.
Yep.
Um, I think you had 30 minutes, right, for me?
Yeah. I mean, I can go on. I mean, I've
You
got
can
time.
go on.
Yeah.
Okay, good, good, good. I wanted to talk to you also. There's so many things I want to talk to you about, but let's touch this thing about, the whole, the Uvalde, the security of our schools, because you have children, I have children.
Mhm.
Um, they don't feel safe. And I am not one to take away gun rights. I don't think that is a solution. But our children, our teachers, our staff have a right, and they need that security in schools. What would you say would be a solution? I've heard, like, I don't know if you ever seen an interview that Victor Avila did, and he had the solutions that I liked about, the having police in schools, but also having this type of camera
Mhm.
that senses a gun or a vehicle that's been parked there for a very long time and reports directly to the police department.
Okay.
But what are your solutions, or what would you?
So I'm all about technology. I'm an NRA lifetime endowment member. I'm a Gun Owners of America member. I'm a Second Amendment advocate, and I actually study policy. So I'll read in the Defense Act. I'll read all these materials where they try to slip in little notes of taking your gun rights away. They put it in that. So I think it's National Defense Act, or I forgot the NADD, whatever
The
act.
NDAA?
NDAA, I'm sorry, yeah. So
Mhm.
they try to slip in verbiage, and they try to start it at the military level. But let me kind of get past that, because I'm definitely against that. Because what they try to do, and even Crenshaw to a certain extent had agreed with it. And this was before 2021, because when I was at CPAC, and we were there with Bianca, and you were there that year in July of 2021.
21.
Yeah, 21. That people were coming up to me because they were like, what is Crenshaw doing? Are you running against Crenshaw? And I was like, no, 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 no. And what he was doing is he's posturing. He's
Mhm.
posturing and saying, hey, I had to vote this way to get the bill in the next, to the next round, blah, blah. I don't care. You know what? All the other Freedom Caucus guys, that I follow their records as well. When they saw that, it was like, nay. They weren't worried about getting into the rundown. They were like, nay, we're not letting that advance, because we're protecting our citizens' rights. I'm a big Second Amendment advocate, big time. So my solution to something like that is you lock down the school. You have a choke point, so there's only one entry point. So I like the technology that Victor was there at CPAC, and I met, and I've
Mhm.
seen Victor in a couple of events all around, since then, and NRA events as well. But my solution is choke points, definitely security. You have plenty of retired military and veterans. I mean, police force retired. They're proficient. they know the law, they know what to do in situations because they have years of experience. So why not pay them? Coming back from war, part of it is assimilating and having a purpose and a job. Why not put these veterans at something that they know how to do very well and they're very proficient? Do you think an 18-year-old, 20-year-old is going to be proficient as a 40, 45-year-old, 35-year-old veteran that's been in a theater or two, a tour or two rather? No. So that's one point that I absolutely agree. If we're paying for security, why not have that as one component? I can guarantee you that is not a costly component. Number one. Two, lockdown with maybe the bulletproof type of capacity, so they don't have that. That's a locked chamber. Number one. There's an in-between chamber between there and entering the school. They have it at my kid's school, and this was before Uvalde, and this is before some of the other, Sandy Hook. My children's school had that. That's a good security. It's a choke point. You can only come in one way when school starts, and then after school ends, and once again, there's no danger, but you have a very controlled environment. You have the police there, the security. I don't mind, like Victor was saying, some of the technologies. That's great. Add it on. There's nothing more than protecting the lives of our kids. And you saw it in Uvalde. There was mothers that were willing to go without a gun to save their kids' lives, and people standing by. That blows my mind of the just absolute incompetence that occurred in that situation. Am I going to say that I had a solution? No, but I guarantee you, I would have taken my pistol, I would have taken my weapon, and I would have gone full force because, once again, I'm not trying to inject, God's all the solution, but He is actually my solution. If it's my time to go, it's my time to go. If I want to take out evil because he's trying to harm other kids, I don't care if you're a police officer, you're better trained than I am. I'm a good shot. I work on it. I work on it regularly. But I don't understand why they didn't do that.
It was very upsetting to see that. When you take an oath to protect and the community, the people, you took that oath. You're giving up your life. You're putting your life at risk. You know that you can die at any moment while doing a job, because that's the oath that you took. I wanted to be a police officer for a while there.
I've come to a point in my life too where if God wants me up and it's my time, He's going to call me. If not, I'm going to take out evil and let him meet his maker. That's my mentality. If it's my time, it's my time. I'm not afraid to die because I know I'll be in a better place. But the fact that trained individuals that go into this career stood by while children got slaughtered, I can't get past. And there's a whole bunch of great solutions, ex post factos, after Sandy Hook, after the Florida shooting. I forgot the name of the school, but nonetheless, the point being is, are things being done? Where are the solutions? Where's the money from the government to give to the state? To lay down. But they're giving over 60, 80 billion to Ukraine, not the border, not the schools, but 60 billion, 80 billion, whatever the number is up to now. I think there was another 11 billion going. Basically, they're siphoning money. I mean, everybody knows that. But why not put 10 billion into this? Why not put 10 billion to the border? That's 20 billion. That's 1/3 of what's already been spent, or a quarter of what's already been spent in Ukraine. It's unfathomable.
And that bill cover.
Yeah.
And okay, so you talked about the NDAA. That's something that just went through. And one of the new congresswomen down here, you met her at CPAC, Myra Flores, voted on that. She claims that she didn't know that she claims that it wasn't an amnesty bill. And she denies about the soldiers getting fired if they don't take the jab. But the Freedom Caucus sent out a warning, sent out a memo, not a warning, a memo telling them to vote against it, and told them what was in that bill. And they still voted, for it. And Crenshaw said, no, it's not what it seems. And Marjorie Taylor Greene called him out on it and told him, no, this is what it is. And, she tweeted his tweet and told him that's what it was. It is amnesty. They provided amnesty, and they provided, to get to fire soldiers, in regards to the jab.
Yep. No, I mean that's why if you look at the Freedom Caucus, they are true constitutional conservatives.
Hmm.
They truly represent the people, and I follow them and I read, and I love the spin. With all due respect, okay, there's some new people. You got to learn the process. You got to learn what is layered in there. You've got to understand all the tactics. I'll give a little bit of grace to that. I'm not saying that it's right. I'll give a little bit of grace, but a Crenshaw and a lot of the others, I don't, because they know the tactics of the Democrats. They know how amendments get slipped in the 11th hour. They know that what they're espousing is to cover something so that they can get something else. And the fact of the matter is, Freedom Caucus, they don't care. It's like,
Hmm.
this is the Constitution. This is what's in the bill. This is what it's saying. And everybody else is spinning. Why is it the Freedom Caucus says one thing and then you see the rhinos say the other thing? And it's funny. The rhinos are kind of in line with the Democrats. Isn't that kind of odd? And you have to start weighing, and you have to start really getting involved in the process. And I know Bianca's a big advocate. You're a big advocate. And a lot of us truly say, you got to get involved. You got to know who's representing you, who you're sending to DC to represent you and your beliefs. Because I know that immediately when I jumped in the race, I already knew that I want to be a Freedom Caucus guy. And when I got Paul Gosar's endorsement and I was talking to Andy Biggs, I'm like, hey, I'm committed to be in your caucus as soon as I get elected. Like, sign me up right now. Like, I'm committing, I'm signing whatever you need me to sign, because that's what I truly believe. There's some of they're the few people that exist in Congress that I truly believe truly represent the people. They truly
Yeah,
do.
and I remember talking to you. I had never met you in person. We just had like the Facebook friends. We
Yeah.
had met in Facebook, but
Yeah.
then I got out of Facebook, and we met through a friend of yours from here, from McAllen, because that's where I'm from. And when I met you in person and I started talking to you and getting to know you, you don't fold. You are a true conservative constitutionalist. You did not sell out for endorsements. You didn't get sell out to get all that funding and that money.
And
You
I
ran
didn't get the money.
on your
That's the
values.
obvious part. I didn't get the money. I mean, you can tell. You can tell the people that got the money and
Mhm.
where they vote, and the people that don't and what they truly believe. They don't have anything to prove. And I don't mean to cut you off, but it's just the part of, uh, I've had a successful career. I've lived a decent life. I think I've provided well for my children. I don't have to go to DC to, become a millionaire. I want to go to DC and actually serve and actually want to come back. I Ted Yoho was another guy that endorsed me. He was a Freedom Caucus guy. He's out of Florida. I think it's '03 or '04. I think it's '04, because Steve King was the other guy that endorsed me. These two guys, Steve King wasn't a Freedom Caucus guy, but he was a true constitutional conservative. He got pushed out by McCarthy. And if you read his book, Walking Through the Fire, which he gave me a copy, it tells you the blueprint of what ultimately they did to Madison Cawthorn. And I actually put Madison Cawthorn and Steve King together and said, this is the playbook. They're doing it to you. And that's exactly what happened. That's
Mhm.
exactly what happened to Madison Cawthorn. And Steve King kind of gave me a lot of the rundown, and we've had lengthy conversations. He endorsed me. He goes, hey, this may not help you if I endorse you. Let's just put the brakes on it. I said, Steve, I've talked to you enough, and I met him, and I knew he was a true constitutional conservative, just like the Freedom Caucus people that I have met and did get to know. And I said, I'll take your endorsement right now. I go,
Mhm.
I'm not trying to hide from who I am. If I believe that we are connected because our beliefs are connected, and I know what you stood for, and Ted Yoho and Paul Gosar and Andy Biggs, um, I, I'll
Yeah.
take your endorsement because that's what I represent. It's so funny. Today we talked about, in church, we talked about how Paul was telling is it the Philippians? Uh, I forgot. Yeah, I think it was the church. He was telling them that we need to act like Christ. He goes, you need to act like me. And it wasn't saying, hey, I'm Christ. No, it's I'm representative of Christ. I'm walking like Christ. I'm like this person. You need to act like me because I'm ultimately what Christ is. Well, in this parallel, I'm what
Hmm.
the constitutional conservatives are. I'm the Freedom Caucus. I represent what the people want me to represent, which is a true constitutional conservative. That's what I heard in my district. And for them, for people to say, oh, Hunt got, 54%. I want to believe it, but I'm not going to try to go prove it. It's my first run. I'm starting to understand how this little game works, and
Yeah.
that's fine. People will start understanding where the chips fall. And if you're a true representative, just like Paul was a true representative of Christ, he lived a life like him. Was he perfect and like Christ? No, but he lived like him. I want to be that constitutional conservative that truly is a constitutional conservative, and Freedom Caucus, I think, best represents that, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
and not be afraid of.
Yeah.
There's so many people that want to be part of that lifestyle. They do
Mhm.
it. It's like we said in the beginning, the self-serving, put their names on the spotlight and the news, or just it's a self-serving position that they take it as. We have people like you. I don't know if you followed the race in Florida with Laura Loomer. Laura
Yeah.
Loomer is also a person that doesn't back up. She doesn't back down. She goes full force into everything.
Mhm.
And we strongly believe that that race was also taken away from her. She was leading at the end of the polls closing. Webster went up, I think it was 2,000 votes out of nowhere. Out of nowhere. So she hasn't conceded yet. She goes, I'm not going to concede because conceding means giving them, saying that I accept
Loss.
this
You
fraud
acknowledge you
that happened.
lost. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, Trump hasn't conceded yet. He hasn't.
Yep.
So we are seeing a shift in the party where a lot of us, because you and I seem to be standing in a lot of this together, we see how the Republican has turned away from us, how the Republican has been infiltrated and been turned against the people and more
Mhm.
into the self-serving establishment.
Self-interest.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the unit party.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I've even talked to Democrats because I mean, I'm in the Valley. There's a lot of Democrats here.
Mhm.
They see it from the Democrat Party how it was taken away. So they're at. I mean, they're not going to vote Republican and they're not going to
Mhm.
vote Democrat because they see that it's a uniparty, that it's a lot of self-serving bureaucrats. That's what it
Yep.
is.
This is where we have to really start growing this faction of our party because, you know, even the Democrats, to your point, they're seeing it. They're seeing that the Democrats for sure, but even the rhinos on our end of it, they're not serving them. They're serving themselves. It's self interest. It's how did Dan Crenshaw, in 2 terms, because he's just finishing his second, become the number 3 guy with the biggest coffer in Congress? In addition to that, he made an unbelievable amount of money on the stock market. Hmm. And this is his second term as a congressman for District 2 in Texas. How does that happen? 2 terms. The only 2 people above him that their coffers are bigger than his is Kevin McCarthy. Even he's number 1, believe it or not Nancy Pelosi, like 12, 13 million. Pelosi has 11 or 12 million, and Dan Crenshaw has about 10.5 million in his coffers. How does that happen? You're in your second term. So it's
And I
it's what you think about. It's how to think about, and what we need to kind of like communicate to the people. Are they serving you? Are they truly serving you?
Mhm. Yeah, and look at the endorsements. Look where the money's coming from. When I ran for office here locally, it was
Mhm.
in congressional, but it was local. It was
Yeah.
for commission, and I didn't stray away. I didn't take money. I stood with my look at where their endorsements are coming from. Look at what money they're getting because you
Mhm.
see it in a local level where they start getting the contracts because no, you don't get paid. Oh my
Yep.
gosh, can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay, what is my internet went, it didn't go down, but I can't see you.
I can see you still.
Okay, I don't know what happened.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I can still
I'm
see
just
you. You're coming through on this end, so you're fine. Even though you might be blanked on yours.
okay. We have, I think, 5 minutes because Bianca's gonna board a plane anyways,
Okay.
and she's the one that cuts it. So
Okay.
yeah, it starts from a local level, and if you don't educate the voters locally, they're not gonna know how to vote in a state or national election. And
Mhm.
that's one of the things that they need to know. They need to know where does the candidate stand.
Yep. Yeah, I mean,
So
it's getting involved in educating because I think one of our problems, even within the Republican Party, and I talked about a lot of this on my campaign, was that we work in silos
mhm,
within the Republican Party. We're so fragmented, and because we're fragmented, we want to have the same message or close to the same message, but it gets diluted because it's so fragmented into our little silos of groups within the Republican Party. I mean, the Democrats, I hate to say it, they're very good at it.
mhm,
They're very good at having a cohesive message that goes all across the
mhm.
media and the nation. This is where we need to get better and consistent with our message, even if we're working in silos, which I'm against, honestly, because this is how we need to really start spreading the word and getting the word out and having that consistent message so people start seeing. If not, we're going to continue struggling.
Yes, we need to get stronger in the message. We need to reach out to the communities. One of the things that I've noticed when I was block walking for the mayor down here is the Republican Party, they do block walk, but they don't talk and listen to the people. And they don't reach out after the elections. And that's something that we are failing
Yep.
with the Hispanic or lower communities. But Bianca has to get on a plane,
Okay.
so we need to say
Fine.
bye. Thank you so much, Roland, for coming on in such a short
Absolutely.
notice. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
Hopefully we can do this again.
Anytime.
Or anytime you just want to vent out and just talk it off
Well,
online.
that's daily, but it's okay. No, I'm just kidding.
Let me know. I'm always around. So,
All
but we
right.
can always come on here and we can, try to let people know what they're voting for and who the Republican Party is now.
Absolutely.
So, thank you
All
so
right.
much. Bye.
Peace, guys.
Bye.